Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the AJ Roberts Show on the London Times. We are joined today by the lovely Dr. Kat Lindley from over in the United States. She's currently in Texas. Dr. Kat Lindley is a family doctor, has been practicing medicine for 14 years. She's also a mother of 5 and a member of the school board over there. I'm not going to go into too much detail myself. I'll let Kat explain a lot of that with you as we go through this episode. But I wanted to get Kat on the show today because I'm a big fan of bringing solutions to many problems, as you guys well know. So I try to bring some solutions into every single episode. Now, Kat has worked with patients all over, really, using alternative medicines, which we're going to go deep into, but also the effect that a lot of these mandates are having on children, and as a mother of 5 and obviously on the school board as well. Kat will go into more detail on that. So Kat, welcome to the AJ Roberts Show. It's absolutely delightful to have you here. I love having doctors on the show to share obviously a lot of their wisdom and the different expertise that they bring obviously onto each episode. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with the listeners and the viewers just a little bit about yourself, your background, just to put a bit of context to it, that would be much appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me. So I was actually born in Croatia, former Yugoslavia. I lived there until I was 18 years old. And I left one day before the war started in Croatia and went to live in Italy, eventually came to the States, went to medical school, became physician, and that's kind of where we're at now. So, when the pandemic was starting last year, it was scary for all of us. I do remember having one of my first patients who had COVID. She came to the clinic and her oxygen levels were really low. And it was really scary because she was talking as if she was fine. She kept on saying, I'm not short of breath, I'm good. Next thing we know, we were sending her to the hospital. She was intubated and actually died a few days later. So I remember coming home to my, family and thinking like, I'm doing this, seeing patients and bringing it home to my kids, what's going to happen to us? And I remember crying. So it was really like scary times for all of us. And then, CDC started saying wear a mask, pretty much wear a spacesuit. And then after we ran out of spacesuits, they're like, okay, wear an N95 mask. So we ran out of N95 mask. And they're like, wear surgical mask. We ran out of those. Wear bandana. And then I was like, this just doesn't make sense. And the thing that kind of made me mad last year, early on, is everyone was scared, including physicians' offices, places. And then you had these patients that call and say, well, I think I have COVID. They get tested, they're positive. And everyone is saying, well, stay home and then don't go to the hospital until you can breathe. And pretty much, like you feel like you're dying. And so I feel like in general, at that time, I felt like medical community has abandoned patients somewhat. And I understand we're all running scared. So, when we kind of started regrouping, I was like, this just doesn't make sense. We can't abandon them. We have to treat them. And that's when I started reading and getting involved with different physicians who were treating patients early based on data that was coming from different countries, India, Israel, Spain. And it just kind of makes sense not to sit on sidelines and do our job.
Yeah, and this has been the key thing for me is as I've been really diving deep into this and having conversations with people like all over the world, and I think that's been a real godsend, really, and really important to have these conversations with physicians in all different countries, because every culture is different. The temperature is different in the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere. So building this kind of intelligence picture, so to speak, is something that's been really important in my own findings and on the show, and then obviously delivering this kind of information via appropriate guests like yourself. Conversations I've had with people like in India, for example, who at one point was labeled this huge hotbed, for COVID, and the apparent the origin of the Delta variant, as they're saying, because I'm not sure how much you saw of the reports of it in the UK, but they were saying obviously COVID suddenly was rife over there. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this Delta variant pops up in Bolton in the northwest of England, skip past all these European countries, and in the Middle East, and just popped up in the northwest of the United Kingdom. And then that's all we saw here. Then for weeks on end was like, oh, these people have then got the Delta variants. But obviously, with the testing procedures, the question's always been asked: well, how can you tell what variant it is if it doesn't even differentiate between COVID, flu, and common cold? So that's the one big question that's been going on for months and months, as this has kind of just rolled on. But for yourself, obviously the treatment protocols has obviously been a huge part of what's been happening in every country. Now, you've been treating people with alternative medications for a number of months now. Like, would you mind explaining a little bit about what you've been up to in that respect?
So I wouldn't call them alternative, because they're actually real medications. We just using them. At one point they were used for certain illness, and then we learned it actually can be used for COVID as well. But before we go there, I just want to tell you what is something that everyone can do at home, right? Because we learned right away that low levels of vitamin D make people more at increased risk of getting COVID, or people who are morbidly obese are the ones that struggle with COVID the most. So one of the things all my patients are taking vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc. We also found that N-acetylcysteine, which is NAC, is very good to have on board because it's antioxidative compound, so it works really well. And there are other things that patients can take and take care of themselves. Lose weight, decrease stress levels, try to sleep better. All of these things are going to prime your immune system to actually handle this. And then as the time went on, there was a question, does hydroxychloroquine work? Well, Dr. Zelenko used that in his high risk population in New York. He used hydroxychloroquine and Z-Pak, some steroids and things like that, and his patients did well. At some point, we learned that ivermectin works really well. So ivermectin is the medication you use for scabies, for lice and things like that. But in certain doses, it's shown to have antiviral effect as well. And there is actually a region in India, starts with K. I'm not sure, Cater or something. I can send you an article so we can actually have the actual region. But what WHO did, they gave these patients in India this medical kit. And then no one would talk about what that medical kit had. And recently we discovered medical kit had ivermectin, doxycycline, pulse oximetry, Tylenol, I believe vitamin D as well, and zinc. And this region decreased the incidence of COVID in that area. So even WHO is using ivermectin, although, there are lots of places say you shouldn't, this and that. But when you have someone who is sick and you have all this medication that could help, and if you're a good physician, you monitor your patients, you take care of them, why wouldn't you try?
Yeah, exactly.
Why are we so scared? Why are we letting patients get so sick that they can't breathe and go to the hospital, and then whether they end up on ventilator or something like that? It always just baffled me. Like, we've used medications that were intended for something, and then we learned it might help in something else. We always done that. We always have used the medications that way. So now all of a sudden to say that this medicine that has been safe in the past, we use it for all sorts of things all over the continents, that all of a sudden we can use it. It just, I just don't get why a lot of medical boards and countries are starting to say that, it's harmful, it doesn't work, when we have studies showing that it does work.
Yeah, and I've seen some great interviews with Dr. Peter McCulloch, who's obviously a phenomenal physician, like ridiculously highly qualified. He's like right up there with in terms of qualifications, and I've seen some great interviews with him, and he said that in the early stages, when there was talk of obviously hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and stuff like that, that bogus and like analytical reports were coming out written by people to say that it was dangerous for the heart and stuff like that. And you're talking about a guy that's one of the sort of most highly qualified and experienced cardiologists in the world, who runs a centre with cardiologists who have held more hearts than anywhere else in the world, have obviously debunked that report straight away because it wasn't correct at all. And
I can debug it as well. I actually have rheumatoid arthritis, so I take 400 milligrams of hydroxychloroquine every single day for rheumatoid arthritis.
Okay.
Every single day. I've been on it for 9 months, almost 10 months now. My heart is great. My cardiologist looked at it. Everything's perfect. And for COVID, the dose is 400 milligrams for 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
So now to say that that's going to damage someone's heart just for taking it for 5 days, when we have these patients like me who have taken it for years and months and it hasn't done anything to us, and there's no toxicity other than you have to do eye exam yearly because there can be some deposits in your retina. Other than that, there's no cardiac toxicity. And that's why a good physician knows who is the patient to watch. And if someone has cardiac issues, then maybe you say, well, I'm not going to do that. I might try something else. But to say in general that's going to harm the population, they're going to die from heart issues because of this medication for 5 days, it's when you start questioning and saying like, these things don't make sense. And the same thing with ivermectin. There was these reports of people overdosing on it. What has happened? Some people were desperate to get ivermectin. They started taking the horse paste. Obviously, it's not a medication intended for humans, so you shouldn't take it because the concentration is different. The additives are different. There could be side effects, but if you take prescribed medication that were prescribed in the past for different things, and you take it under the watch of your physician, you should be safe. And I don't know of anyone who has overdosed on ivermectin when given correctly. And I think I shared with you the email from that patient a week ago or something. She emailed me, said that she doesn't know that if she would have survived. And I don't necessarily know that, but I can agree with her. But when I had COVID about 4 weeks ago, so now I'm going to talk as a patient, it was scary. It was scary because I got hit really hard. I started having severe headache. It's hard to describe this headache. It's like one of those things that never happened before. I had high fever, pain in my legs. I couldn't even walk. And actually, I qualified for monoclonal antibodies. So within 3 hours, I received monoclonal antibodies. And I woke up next morning feeling, I wasn't short of breath, but I felt short of breath. But I felt like I had lead on my diaphragm, and I just couldn't expand my lungs. And that's what I actually called Peter McCullough. He's a friend, and as I didn't want to treat myself, because that's one thing as a physician, you should never treat yourself. I didn't want to treat myself, so I was like, we kind of discussed what I should take and things like that. And I've taken ivermectin, and within 12 hours, I felt better. Wow. Now, was it psychological? Was it medication? I don't know. I felt better. And I continued taking it for 5 days, and I had to take steroids as well, the nebulized steroids, because my oxygen levels started dropping down. And as soon as I started taking them, they went up. So I can tell you that during that time when you're sick, it's quite scary. And we have to make sure that as physicians, we are there for our patients.
But that's the key though, isn't it? Like that early treatment, and I've heard Peter McCullough say it many times, and obviously you just elaborated on it there, is actually using it in the early stages of treatment. And if it was used in early stages of treatment worldwide, then you wouldn't have people getting to the point where they need ventilation. And those, sort of dangerous last stages of treatment, which that's when your percentage obviously for survival like rapidly decreases, isn't it?
Yes, and there's still going to be some patients who might not respond to the treatment, but that's why we do have hospitals and we have treatments in the hospitals that you can try using. But I think the key is to keep them out of the hospital. The key is to treat the patients as early as we can so they don't end up in the hospital. And the key is really prevention. And prevention is vitamin D and trying to lose some weight. And there's great studies from Israel saying that bifidobacterium if you have high levels of this good bacteria in your gut, that you have decreased chances of getting COVID. So I tell all my patients to drink lots of kefir or kombucha. I hate kombucha, so I like to go with kefir option. But those are things that you can do preemptively so you don't get COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you do get COVID, the most important thing is contact your doctor. And this is another thing, like I think we need to stop, and we have stopped somewhat, testing everyone.
Yes.
If you're sick, so when patient calls me, if they're sick and I suspect COVID, that's when I say, come in, we'll do the test, and then we'll decide what we're going to do. If the test is negative or they test for strep, I take care of that. But if it's COVID, then we know what to do. Some patients don't need any special treatment. Some patients just do vitamin D, zinc, bifidobacterium, and things like that. But the most important key is to get to them fast enough and take care of them from the beginning.
Mm. So obviously with the people that you've treated so far in this respect, is there, or have you found that a larger proportion of people with the, let's say, the worst symptoms are people that have either comorbidities or are overweight and are on the more unhealthy spectrum?
Yeah, so the hardest patients to treat were the one that had obesity or diabetes or things like that, more medical issues. But even those patients, if you got to them early enough, did really well. And the key is to be there and support them from the beginning. And an important thing also is to check oxygen levels. So as soon as patient will tell me that they're positive, I would always tell them to go by pulse oximetry so they can keep track of their oxygen level all the time. That also gave them a little bit of reassurance, because if your oxygen stayed up, then we were doing good. But if it was going down, I knew when I would have to tell them, go to the emergency room, go to the hospital or something. And also here in US, I don't know how, if you guys can get this in UK as much, these monoclonal antibodies work really well. I had few patients who said they didn't feel good after getting them, but I would say majority of my patients that received them said they felt better right away. It felt like the antibodies kind of helped their immune system kick in, so they were able to handle the disease better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine over here is proving quite difficult. And I know same in Australia. I use our three countries as reference because obviously I think we're seeing the between us three, we're seeing like the most ridiculous procedures and restrictions and medical freedoms being taken away coming. And you look at countries like Australia, for example. I know in Victoria, New South Wales, I'm not sure if it's the same as Queensland and Western Australia, but doctors have been told if you're caught prescribing ivermectin, you're looking at instantly 6 months prison time for a drug that won a Nobel Prize and has been proven across multiple studies to work, which clearly shows you what the agenda is. Like, there's no two ways about it. I don't think you can really question that. But that's the sincere problem that our countries like Australia are facing. But I mean, I think if you take those tyrannical leaders out of the equation, they'd be in a much better place. I think obviously the mandate and the policies that are being driven, which is from Big Pharma, is the key issue. It's not, you can't deny the fact that because it's working exactly as it should do with you and what you're doing with your patients. It can clearly see that. And in other countries around the world, so India has been using it like en masse, haven't they? Brazil using it en masse. I believe is Argentina been using it in quite large doses as well.
Yeah, I believe so. But the most important thing is, like, let's say you guys are not, I believe you have to have like a special license to prescribe ivermectin in the UK.
Yeah.
There are other things you can do though. Like we do know that if you give them inhaled steroid, it really helps a lot. Vitamin D. I think it's important. All of your listeners actually go to their doctor and say, check my vitamin D level. If it's less than 50 nanograms, I believe it is. I forgot. You're gonna have to like see what scales you guys use. We use differently. But for us, if it's less than 50, it should be about 50 for your immune system to work really well. And then they can use some antibiotics if patients get secondary infections. There are certain things that we can still do. But I agree with you. You know, it's important to really look at facts. I'm a little bit tired of people interpreting data for me. You know, most physicians, scientists, we've taken a lot of science classes, and just give us the data, we can interpret it with you. Don't. What I found is that some articles write a conclusion before they actually interpret their data. And those are the ones that like they had to retract from different journals saying, oh, the data wasn't really sure, or we used the data from a company that kind of maybe lied to us. So to establish protocols based on fraudulent data is hurting everyone. You know, each and every one of us wants to help person next to us, right? I don't want anyone around me to get sick. So when my kids and I got sick, we stayed home. We took care of our problems, and we all got healthy and went back. I took care of my patients from home. They knew I was sick. It wasn't a big deal. I think we all have common sense, and we all want to get over this so we can get back to our normal reality, because this is not normal.
No, absolutely.
No, it's not normal to have children wear a mask, or to mandate young children to be vaccinated when the risk of this disease is so low. And I don't know if you remember this, but last year there was a study in Germany that people don't talk about anymore. But it showed that, so in Germany, the kids stayed in school for a while. It showed that actually kids protected the teachers, because the kids had some herd immunity and stuff like that. It showed that they actually were protected from their own immunity to the teachers around them. So I'm not saying that everyone should get the disease, but now that I have had it, I feel great because I check my antibodies, they're really high. And there's a recent study from Israel that shows that people who had COVID have great protection even a year later. And this is another thing that really, really annoys me. They've started changing definitions of what immunity is, herd immunity, what your innate immunity is. I can tell you that if I had a disease, any kind of disease, if I had chickenpox, well, I never had chickenpox, so I had to get vaccine for chickenpox. But let's say you had chickenpox as a kid, you're protected from chickenpox. You're not chickenpox anymore, right?
Yeah.
So
we used to have like chickenpox parties as a kid, wasn't
what
it?
I had before. Yes, and I'm not saying we should have COVID parties because some people get very, very sick with it. But I'm just saying that
You might not get, at least you won't get fined for that if we're actually having a COVID party.
well, you should recognize the immunity. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you have COVID, you should recognize that someone has had COVID and that their body knows what to do. How many centuries have we survived, right, as humans? And our bodies have adapted to all of these diseases. It's adapting to COVID as well. And we will keep on adapting. So I think we just need to get our policymakers to start understanding that, you know.
Yeah. And the problem is as well, is this is a deep problem. And I had Karen Kingston on explained about this, who used to work for Pfizer a few years back, and she's a bioanalyst. I don't know if you've seen any of her stuff, but she's been on like Stupidity Show and that a few times. And she brought some slides on, and she actually showed obviously what's in the vaccines and stuff, you know, which was very alarming. However, she also explained that in quite a lot of detail, like why pretty much everybody who's already had COVID, who then gets like, I want to just coerced, but literally gets told like to still have the vaccine from their doctors or, you know, physicians, hospitals, whatever, get actually really ill from it, because, you know, they've already had the disease, they've built up that immunity to it, and then obviously the jabs then making them like extremely ill afterwards. And yeah, you know, when we talk about things that annoy you, that's one thing I think is horrendous, when you've got trained or so-called qualified trained physicians and that actively telling people that they still need to go and get the jab, even if they've had COVID like a month ago, in your case, for example, because that's quite common over here. And I see people all the time saying it, you know, on social media in Australia. It's hard to not judge, but it's kind of like this big push to try and get anybody and everybody obviously vaccinated, whether you've had COVID or not. And that's what we seem to have forgot, exactly that that immunity type thing. So you talk about herd immunity in the definition's changed quite recently, hasn't it? And doctors, like a few months back, were all saying, you only need to get like 60% or whatever, like herd immunity. Now you've got people like Dan Andrews of Victoria in Australia saying it's got to be 80%. You've got other places saying it needs to be 97%. And it's just crazy. And you get the
asked him, like, we're pulling that out. No, I was just saying, like, I would like to know where they're pulling those numbers out, which rabbit hat, that's because they keep on changing this goal, and it's like, what is the point? Like, do you really want the population to be locked down forever? And for me, the hardest thing about mandates is I grew up in a communist country.
Yeah.
I grew up as a Catholic, and I was never allowed to say that I go to church, because if I did, my parents would get punished for that. So to mandate things that we all have to do and no one can question anything, you can, even as a physician, if you say something against this or against that, depends where you live, you can lose your license, you can end up in jail. Or when can we stop asking questions, and when have we accepted that as a norm? I can tell you that most politicians are lawyers, not many of them are physicians. So for them to make decisions based on things that just are not reality, it's like masking children. How much good has that really done? What I can tell you for sure is they've done studies that IQ has dropped this year. That also, how many children actually have killed themselves, even here in the United States, because they are depressed? How many are suicidal and we have to watch them? How many are on depression medications? I don't know about your kids, but my youngest one, he has a speech delay. So he needs to see your mouth and facial expressions to really understand what's going on.
Yep.
You wearing a mask and him wearing a mask. How much delay have we done and damage to our kids because of some of these mandates that don't make sense? And instead of going forward and learning, we keep on going backwards. And I think I just read yesterday that New Zealand, how they had a complete lockdown, their prime minister just realized that didn't work. So they're not going to have a lockdown. Well, I could have told that after a month it's not going to work.
But you touched on it just there. This is the problem. You've got politicians making decisions based on health issues, when they're they say that they're taking advice from these groups, for example, but where we've got the scientific group here in the UK, for example, a SAGE group made up of about 20 individuals. You've got one that's from a communist party that would literally love to see people walking around in masks for the rest of their life, and she pretty much said that on TV. I'm surprised if she doesn't go to bed with a mask on, or showers in it. You then got, I think it's about 14 or 15 of these members are all heavily invested in the pharmaceutical companies. And these people are advising the government and telling the government what to do, or the government are saying that's what they're leaning in on. But, all of this has become very apparent to the majority of people. And I know the people watch my show have since listening to what each guest has said, have then gone on to do a lot more research and found out a lot of this themselves anyway, which is the whole point of doing this kind of show anyway, is to help people learn a lot and move on from it. But the fact that these the politicians are making these decisions for millions of people when it comes to things like health is absolutely ludicrous. And we can all see worldwide now that this is nothing to do with health now at this stage. We're past that, way past that. Now, you talk about mandates and obviously masks and stuff like that. We can clearly see it's all to do with the virtual signaling to keep people quiet. But from a school board point of view, which you sit on, obviously I've seen some fantastic videos and amazing warrior parents standing up in front of these crowds and school boards, and even people that are in the medical and science industries, speaking out about mask mandates and obviously the lack of science behind them and all the damage that they're doing. like, what are you seeing on these school boards, or as a member of the school board, sitting on the school board? How does it work for you? Obviously, given the science and the harm it does on kids. Like, are you actively dropping the mask mandates within these schools, or do you have the power to do that?
So in Texas, our governor got rid of the mask mandate last year.
Yeah.
And it was up to the school board to actually, we had a meeting and we discussed it with our, within the school board, and we had some parents present, and it was very transparent. We talked about what is beneficial for kids, what's happening, and things like that. And our school board decided to drop the mask mandate at that time as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then we continued being proactive. So if the child was sick, we would ask parents to keep them at home until they feel better, they've seen a physician, and things like that. And we really didn't see cases go up. We were able to finish the school year. Kids did really well. And everyone was happy, because it's very difficult, when you have a 5-6-year-old, to have them wear a mask. And I was talking to one of the teachers, and she's like, if you only knew what happens to that mask throughout the day, falls on the floor, they put it back up, their nose is running, they wipe their nose. It's like the germs inside the mask, just for one day, for one child. It's just, incredible. So we just learned that washing hands, keeping kids home, making sure they're taking their vitamins, all that, it really works. And we end up having a really successful year, and everyone was happy. Our kids play sports, they play band, and it was a good year. Now, the schools that up north, lots of them kept their mask on, and that's where you saw a lot of parents come in front of the school board. And actually, the saddest thing, it wasn't the parents, it was some kids. Some kids came and said, do you know what you're doing to me when I'm wearing this mask? And they actually made some great arguments. And Larry and I talked about the rate of depression in our young kids. We had several, not in my community, but community next door, actually commit suicide for whatever reason, and I think we've just done such a disservice to our children. I think it was okay to do it at the beginning. We didn't know. You learn, right? It's okay to make mistakes. And that's what I think I wish that some of these people said that. We didn't
There's been
know.
no responsibility, is there? There's been no, sorry.
I think it's okay to say, I made a mistake. This is what I could do based on data I had, but now I know better. So we're not going to do that again. Let's go somewhere else. Instead, we keep on going back to things that don't make sense. You talk about people wearing a mask, like that lady wearing a mask in the shower, probably. You know what gets me? When people wear a mask in a car and they're by themselves. Who are you wearing the mask for?
You just reminded me, I had Dr. Richard Fleming on the show, and we were talking about this, and he said, about the mask and how they don't actually work, and at all in this kind of setting for everyday people, like whatsoever. They're a lot more harm than good. But he said, and then you get the people who wear them in the car. He said, if you're watching this and that's you, I can tell you that it's not doing any good. And if you're trying to do surgery while you're driving, then that's not good for you either. I can tell you now, it's not going to work. So I thought that was brilliant. But he absolutely hit the nail on the head. And but I think from an individual level, that all very much comes down to the level of like psychological torment that those people have succumbed to through whatever media it is that they take in on a daily basis. So here, I guarantee you, those people just watch the BBC, and especially the elderly. You could still see them all around town outside wearing masks, and you guarantee that they get up in the morning, BBC, lunchtime, watch the BBC News, sat in front of the TV at tea time, watch the BBC News, and it's all kind of doom and gloom, their narrative. And the only people really in their circle would be their immediate family, and you don't know what their views or experiences are either. So again, it all comes down to that, like, what kind of questions are you asking yourself?
Like some people do feel more comfortable wearing a mask, and that's okay. It's totally fine.
Absolutely,
mask, go ahead. But I think mandating everyone else wearing a mask is just a little too much, because I think what we should ask people to be responsible, personal responsibility. You're sick, you stay home, go see a doctor and decide if you need to be treated for whatever.
Mm.
But if you're healthy and can contribute to society, go do your job. Go earn the money so you can pay for your family. Making us all be bound to the government, get money from the government, things like that. That's socialism and communism. That's how they get you. They're like, if you do this little thing for me, I'll give you this. If you do this little thing for me, I'll give you that. I think it's important for people to, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. American, the Declaration of Independence. For people like me who actually have come here to live the American dream, that means a lot.
Mm.
Me to see this country go to something that I ran away from hurts my heart.
Yeah, I bet it does. Yeah.
And I think our politicians should realize that we are good people. We're going to do what's best for everyone else and for ourselves and our families, but we're not idiots.
Mm.
We can see what's happening, and we just need to. There's no normal anymore. We'll never go back to normal. People say, let's go back to normal. There's no normal anymore. We're never going. I think we just have to learn to live with what we have and demand more of others. We elected them, and we should be allowed to de-elect them, or whatever the word should be. But with the way elections are going in most countries, how many people are confident that our votes matter? I'm not confident that any of our votes matter anywhere. And I was just in Europe about a month ago, and even in England, you guys live better life than we do. At least I wasn't watching TV, so maybe that's why. And then I was in Croatia, and Croatians really live a good life because they go sit outside with their families and friends and talk about things. So watching TV. Then I came home Monday. By Tuesday, I was a nervous wreck. I was like, I can't handle this. I can't sleep. Because like you said, it's media overload. And they're telling you things that are not true.
Yeah.
Because if you go outside your door, you're like, that's not true what they're saying. This didn't happen. Or like, when I was in England, the reason I loved going there, I wanted to see what you guys are doing. I was like, are England people like really as crazy as they make them sound? English people, like, are you guys all like, you guys are not, you're like us, you're outside. I went to the Buckingham Palace, and I went on that London Eye behind you and stuff like that. And people are normal, happy, living their life. That's what we want. We all just want to live a happy, normal life so we can have a future for our children. And I think I'm hoping that our politicians, well, there's no hope there. But I was going to say, like, I wish they would realize that most people will do the right thing. They just need to let us live our life.
To be honest, and I think it is the same for our government here as well, and other governments around the world that are very much part of this this agenda. I'm pretty sure that they all know that. They all know that the people are great, loving people. But I think when there's huge sums of financial incentive involved, and I think clearly a lot of these politicians are literally being grabbed by the coolies at the minute. They're just in a dark place, and it's all about sort of like how long can it be dragged out. Otherwise they wouldn't be trying to bring in the things they're bringing in. And you clearly see people like Dan Andrews of Victoria is completely sold out to China, like absolutely. And I don't know if you saw his interview the other day. He said that as of the 15th of October, if you haven't had at least like one dose of vaccination, you won't be allowed to work. And the reporter asked, well, what about the people that haven't had it or won't have it? And he said, it's simple, they won't work. So, and that's what we're seeing in Australia. And I keep saying to people in the UK, like, please pay attention to what's happening in Australia, because it is horrendous.
I think Australia is a test run. If you ask. I think Australia, since it's kind of an island, and I believe they're not allowed to have guns or whatever. I think it's a test run to see how much they can push, because I don't know if this is true or not, but I've read reports that they have quarantine camps or something like that.
Yeah, they've already started building them in Australia. Yeah,
they're creating a two-tier society, vaxxed and unvaxxed. It's like, what about people who really can't get a vaccine for whatever reason? They really have an anaphylactic reaction to it. And it's like,
Well, all the people, like my wife, for example, who had bad reactions to the first one, she had it back all the way back in January when didn't know nowhere near as much as what we know now, and had bad reactions to it. Like, there's tens of thousands of people like that throughout the UK that, had a terrible reaction to the first one. Like, why would they want to rush out and get a second one?
yeah, it's just like, I feel like we collectively have lost our minds. And my favorite recent interview it wasn't an interview, it was actually a hearing in Senate. Rand Paul, and our HHS secretary, and he said to him, something like, so all of us who had COVID and now have herd immunity, you call us flat earthers. Like, what degree do you have, Mr. Mayor? Like, which science degree do you have? And then he's like, well, we're looking at data and our physicians from here and here and here. I'm like, yeah, they're not really looking at the data, because
it's just that though, and that's the problem. You get all these politicians, or when people are sat in front of the Senate and stuff like that, you see straight away they just slopey shoulder it onto, oh, we get our information from our physicians and this is this. Like, they just hide behind it, and you see exactly the same in articles and newspapers and stuff like that. Oh, top science expert warns against X, Y, and Z. We're like, well, who is this expert? They never mention anybody by names either. It's always like top science expert.
Talk about Dr. McCullough. He's a renowned cardiologist who had published a lot of articles before this whole thing started, just to kind of not put him on to the side and say, well, he's a crazy guy just because he does something and he's seeing results with it. Who gives them, there's some medical boards and stuff, they say if you provide misinformation, you can lose your license, something. And then the question is, what is the misinformation? Like, why have we become so indoctrinated? The only thing that I need to remember is the Bible, because I'm a Christian and I believe in God. But like everything else, like, which doctrine would you like me to know? And it's like, that's like Marxism. You look at Marx's book there, that's doctrine, that's something you have to memorize when you are living in those type of countries. And it's just hard to believe we have given up so many freedoms and we keep on giving them up. And what is the end point? When are we going to say, I want to leave this place a better place for my kids? Right now, it's not a great place for my kids. How much more freedom are we going to give up, and what are they going to learn? It's normal.
I think people just need. It's unfortunately going to come down to the point when somebody in their family drops, for them to actually wake up and actually see, well, actually something's going on here. What is it? And because at the minute, not a lot of these people's lives aren't actually being affected too much. So here in the UK, people are at work, people are going out to the pubs and the cafes and stuff like that. I mean, even though these experts like did all their little graphs and modeling on TV and said, oh, when the kids go back to school, it's all going to shoot right up, that was debunked very quickly because the cases haven't gone up at all. But they're already trying to, really try and bring this COVID passport in, for stadiums and nightclubs and like where there's large gatherings. But as soon as people allow that, it will then be pubs, it will be restaurants, and it will be shops, supermarkets, and anywhere else where there's more than 20 people. And then after that, it will be school, it will be everything, and this is what people really need to get a grip of. Like, just because it's not affecting you in your life right now, it will absolutely, like, you will give up everything, like, and will like it, as the old 2030 agenda says.
My favorite thing is I was just in Rome, and they had some kind of outdoor little food tasting and wine tasting, and it had a little barricade, but it's all in the open, and you have to have a green pass, which means you're vaccinated or whatever, to go to that little barricade. And right next to them, I'm like, right here, I walk without a green pass, without a mask on. They have to have a mask on, and there's nothing separating us. It's air. So they're protected in a little bubble with a green pass, while normal people just walk by and do their own thing. And like you said, like right now it's happening in this little space, but also it's going to be this big space. And in New York, they say you can go to certain restaurants if you don't have the vaccine and things like that. And,
there's no science behind it at all. none.
No, I was just going to say, like, when you go to the restaurant, you have to wear a mask while you walk into your chair.
Then you sit down and you take it off.
This little bubble is protected, right? You can take off your mask and eat. It's like, I don't know. We just have to say nothing.
But again, yeah, and again, people just they just conform to it. They just say, well, you know, and you know, I'm not going to mention any names because I know they listen to the podcast, but I've got people in my family that just say like, well, you know, we just got to do as we're told and get on with it. Like, no, you don't. This is like your whole life, your family's life, you know, kids' lives that are being completely dictated by non-scientific nonsense. And there's no other way of putting it. Like you're saying, there's just that this everything about it so hypocritical, isn't it? Like hypocritical science.
I feel like Australia is a test.
Yeah.
You know, they want to see how far they can push it. And that's just my opinion. I haven't, you know.
It's clear to see.
Because they pushed mask, we said, okay, we'll wear mask. Now they said, do this. We're like, okay, we'll do that. So I think they keep on escalating to see, well, what else are they going to give up to live a normal life, right? Because this is not normal.
Well, I mean, you only have to look at Victoria, you're saying about a test ground, like, and we know masks have no effect whatsoever. People pull them in and out of their dirty pockets, dirty hands, them. They're just a petri dish for bacteria. And we know this because, like here, for example, I speak to doctors, nurses, and a lot of people have reached out to me. And most of the conversations I've had, I've always said to them, like, what's the rate of people that you're seeing coming through with bacterial lung infections? And they're saying it's gone through the roof. And it's people that wear a mask all day at work and or whatever else they do. And with the and obviously along with that, you know, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. But like in Australia, they're telling people that you can't physically, you know, if you get caught pulling your mask down to eat and drink, you'll be fined $500, I believe it is. And it's just ludicrous. And this is outside. And you're seeing little kids and teenagers being wrestled to the ground by police because they're not wearing a mask.
I know there was a photo done somewhere, some officials, there were 5 of them standing in front of 5 or 6 young kids. It looked like maybe 7, 8-year-olds. The little kids are wearing masks. Officials are all smiling without a mask.
Yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
And it's like, you know, it's just really disgusting at this point. And it just really breaks my heart to see that we've come to this point where true science doesn't matter. It's like, I call it like fake science because they just keep on making new stuff up and we keep on going with it. And, you know, and hoping that we'll go back to our normal life. Like I said, there's no normal life anymore. I think we just need to demand more, ask more of them. If they say something is true, if they want you to get boosters, give me data why. Explain it to me like I'm a 2-year-old or whatever. And then I'll listen if I can understand what you're trying to do. But just to like take everything as gospel, it's like we're not idiots. No one is. And I think we can all make right decisions for our families and our neighbors. Just give us, you know, just realize that we're normal people like you, and you don't get to dictate how the rest of our lives are going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, on the subject of those boosters, you only have to look at Israel to see that, like, as of, might be this week or next week, if you haven't registered for your booster, you're no longer vaccinated. So those are people who then felt they had to get double jab to have their green or their COVID pass. If you don't go and get your booster, you're no longer vaccinated. And I guarantee that will absolutely happen here as well. So I think people have got some very big decisions to make moving forward, obviously for the benefit of them and their own health. And if that's you, I thoroughly suggest actually researching what's actually in these things before going and getting a 3rd jab, because, you know, just have a look at what's happening in Israel. Cases and deaths are through the roof as more and more gets rolled out over there. Again, it's almost like Australia is a test island for the psychological side of things, and Israel is almost like the test country for just, you know, how much graphene oxide can be, obviously injected into people. And you only have to look at the rates of deaths and cases in Israel in linear with the rollout. It's just unbelievable. And if that doesn't make people ask questions, I don't know what does.
And I think you touched on something. You didn't call it this, but informed consent.
Yes.
If you're asking someone to do something, inform them what their risks and benefits are, and patient can decide. Some people are high risk and they prefer to get the vaccine. That's okay. Inform them what is happening, and everyone can make their decision in the right way. Initially, I don't know if you know this, like vaccines didn't have any kind of, the paper inside the box was blank. Now it has some things inside it. But to demand things and say it's for the best of everyone else because we're under a pandemic and we're all going to die. But when you look at the actual mortality rates, in some age groups is like the flu, and we haven't really, some people die from the flu and some people have died from COVID, too many. But it doesn't mean that like the whole planet has lost all the rights we've ever had. And now we're going to have select group of people who don't really have degrees in science to make decisions for us based on whatever data. It just doesn't make sense. And I think like we the people should just demand more. You want me to do something? Sure, I'll do it, but tell me why.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll decide if that's the best course of action. We always do it that way. Why can't we do it now? People talk about Nuremberg Code. One of the things that came out of it is informed consent.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me what you want me to do, but inform me why I'm doing something. And then also, there is new medication on the market that's coming out. I'll be happy to use it. Show me data is working great. I have no issues. Like if someone told me that giving patients honey is what's going to cure them from COVID, I would give them honey. It's like if someone says that is this antibiotic will work, I would try it, because watching patients suffer, be afraid at home so that they can lose more rights because you want them to be at home controlled or whatever. It's not why I went into medicine. I went into medicine to help people, and physicians like Dr. McCullough and others, Dr. Zelenko, and normal physicians all over the world, we just want to help people.
Yeah, 100%.
Medicine A is going to work, I'll give medicine A. But give us a choice. Let me and my patient decide what's best for them, and not mandating and falsifying data to say, oh, you're going to kill them. Well, hydroxychloroquine hasn't killed me yet, and I've been on it every single day. So.
No, I totally get you. And what we need more and more Dr. Kat Lindleys and Peter McCulloughs all around the world. I know they're out there. And I think we're very much coming to a point now, and I think definitely in the UK, because we're seeing the bad doctors starting to be served with, with notice of liabilities now. A so-called Dr. Hillary, who's on TV quite a lot, spouting off a load of lies after lies after lies. Had a large contingent of people outside his house at the weekend, and served him the weekend, which is quite pleasing on the eye, to be honest, and it's a sign of good things to come. But we are going to get to a stage, and it is moving in that direction quite quickly, that if doctors, nurses, scientists, physicians have been complicit in crimes against humanity in any shape or form, they are going to get found out very soon, because it's really is starting to move in that direction. I think we're only weeks away before it really starts hitting people, and I would not want to be in the medical services and be around those type of people, because nobody's going to save you. Like, again, it's going to be another classic reminiscence of the Nuremberg trials in the 1940s, and I know people like Rona and that are very much trying to bring these trials through international criminal courts to fruition right now.
I think, I would say that most physician, nurses, other healthcare workers, they're trying to do their job best they can within the confines that are in.
Yeah.
There are days when I worry about what's happening, and if I say something, am I going to get censored? Am I going to get written up by, you know, boards, or because other physicians have? We're all trying to do the best thing for our patients. And I think we have approached this disease very in a wrong way. I think what we should have done from the beginning is what some physicians have done. They said, let's try this, let's see if it works. If it works, let's keep on going. If you learn something else, let's add that. Because this is, with this disease, we're all kind of like step back and said, oh, we don't know what to do, you know, let's have them go to the hospital, and then the whole mess started. We should have just kind of went right in and treat patients, taking care of them. If we did that, this would have been gone within 6 months. And we would still have it, but it would be controlled. It would be like any other virus that we have. Instead, we have let this virus control the world and take away many of our rights. And unless people just start saying, enough is enough, you know, if you want me to do something, tell me why, explain to me why, I'll do it. We have to stop like listening to select group of people mandate how our lives are going to go. And I think it just goes down back to mandates. And I'm not saying talking about vaccines, masks, or any kind of mandate. When you mandate someone to do something for the best of the world, it's like, when have everyone's life taken away your individual right? You know, we're all individuals and we're all going to do the right thing, but let us make the decision. You know, you want your kids to grow up in a safe world. You're going to do everything you can to make the world around them safe. So we need to start asking politicians to see us as people, not numbers. I think they see us as numbers right now, and we don't matter.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And on that subject of responsibility, I think a lot of people need to take a bit more responsibility now and look towards potentially what can happen in the future, and start asking yourself questions like, where do you see things in your own country potentially going? And if so, what can you learn now? What can you adopt now to make sure that you and your family are in the best place possible, but in line with your actual community? Because again, it's all going to come down to community level, like problems for everybody. The same, it's going to be the same whether, no matter what your medical status is, that's what is going to come to that point. This is why everybody needs to stick together, you know, whether you're vaccinated or not. Like, we've gone way past that now, and people shouldn't be, you know, pointing fingers at anybody. Like, we're all amazing human beings being led down a treacherous path by tyrannical people that have obviously are all part of one big agenda, which is, you know, control and finance. So, you know, we need everybody, and, you know, everyone worldwide to understand that and stick together, because they cannot crush the many. You know, the bigger we are, like, the harder it is, you know, to control, like, by far. They just won't be able to do it. And luckily we do have people in the science and medical world like yourselves who are really trying to make as many people aware of, you know, the other things that are out there that we should all be learning. You know, it's not just all about jabs, it's all, you know, everything that comes with it.
And I think one good thing that came out of all this mess is I've seen lots of parents get more involved with their schools.
Brilliant.
They're running for school boards or for different positions in the community, because you're right, you know, for us, like, what happens in DC, they live in their own bubble. They make decisions that have nothing to do with actual little communities. But where you can make a difference is your own community. If you don't like something, you run for an office and you try to make changes from there. And I think it's important for parents and everyone to kind of take responsibility for our own children, our own lives, and just demand more from politicians, and actually vote them out if we can. You know, I think you guys are having UK Reform Party meeting this weekend or something, and it's kind of good to see these different ideas come through. You know, there needs to be more consequences for some decisions that people have made, and some of these leaders really, you know, I love watching them talk on TV, and it's like nothing that people feel. Like, they say one thing, but people are like, what? Like, what is he talking about? Like, I don't care about that. So I think the best way to do our job is to get involved in our community, and it starts at home.
Yeah,
Kids,
absolutely.
and then you kind of spread it out to the neighborhood. And I think we can make it better, but we just need to demand more of everyone around us.
Yeah, no, 100%. And on that note, I'd like to give a massive shout out to the all the veterans that have been doing fantastic things here in the UK and in the US that I've been in communication with, like in their communities, who have been to these rallies, who are really trying to get around, you know, the local people, showing their support and standing shoulder to shoulder with them. We've had some veterans in the last couple of weeks that have done some really great things, which have had a really, really great impact, and it's something I'm very passionate about. Obviously, as a veteran of 15 years in the British military, I know the importance of people like ex-military personnel having a positive stand within their communities, and that it really lifts people up. And moving forward, we're actively raising that number in quite a significant way, not just here in the UK, but in the States, in Australia, Canada, and places like that. So I'm speaking to a lot of figures from the veteran communities in all these different countries, and they're having like a really great impact, and just continues to keep doing that, guys, because I know a lot of veterans worldwide watch this, and feel free to obviously get in touch as well with any sort of like ideas and things that you want to sort of like make more vocal. That's all we can do really, is get those words out there, the good things are happening, and people will rise up to that. It's really important, and want to get involved, so there's some great things happening here. Kat, where can people find you if they want to reach out?
So I have a website I kind of created, and it's my idea is, if we just start thinking again and using our God-given brains, I think we can do a lot more for each other. And the website is katlindley.com. And my medical website is www.eaglemedicalcenter.com. Talking about veterans, I agree with you. I think veteran community is so important. And I'm going to put a plug in for one of the veterans I work with a lot. He was a former Green Beret, and he has a supplement company, right? So when this started and I realized there's some vitamins that help, I texted him and I said, you know what, Travis, I'm taking this many pills and I'm so tired of it and I keep on forgetting them. Can you create a supplement that puts all of them together? And he did. So, veteran community here in US has been really important for us, and it's important for all of us to stand with them.
Brilliant. What's the name of the supplements?
It's alphaeliteperformance.com. And I helped him create the immune response that we use there. But it's one of those things that, like I told you, there's so many things we can do at home, keeping our immune system up not to get the illness. And if you do get the illness, like my children had it, they had no problem. They recovered within a few days because they're taking their vitamins and drinking their yogurt and things like that. So there's so much you can do at home before you get ill.
Yeah, and not just from a medicinal point of view and supplementation, ladies and gents. Keep on top of your exercise, hydrate, try not to drink, sleep. Yeah, sleep obviously is a huge thing. Try not to drink so much. And I'm not just saying that because I don't. I'm saying that because it's I've got a doctor right here that can back up what I'm saying. So yeah, try and have a good portion of all those things, and you'll live a life of much better general health. It's as simple as that. Unfortunately, it's taken this fiasco to like really wake people up to like actually looking after our bodies. And that's why America, UK, and Australia, like three of the most obese countries in the world, are seeing such severe problems and always have such a strain on our national health systems, is because of like all these problems that are linked to obesity and poor lifestyles.
And that's something that all our governments could say, like obesity is a huge risk factor, so let's all eat healthy. Or vitamin D levels are very important. Let's take our vitamin D. There's certain things that we can all do and agree with, and those are little steps, but they make a huge difference.
Mm. Well, I like the Canadian health minister said that vitamin D is bad for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, as he was shaking all the cash in his pocket. Awesome. Kat, thank you for joining us today on the AJ Roberts Show. You know, it's a real pleasure. I know you've got like a lot on, you're doing some great things over there, and I will catch up with you over the next couple of weeks moving forward. Guys and girls, if you haven't already done so, please make sure you subscribe to the AJ Roberts Show YouTube channel, also on Rumble. Okay, it's just AJ Roberts Show, one word. And if you're on Facebook, obviously make sure you like the page as well. That's always my only fee, is that if you like and enjoy these episodes, you know, it's given you something new to learn, it's made you smile, it's made you laugh, or if it made you cry. All right. All I ask that you share it with at least one person today, so we can help get the messages from experts like Kat Lindley and others that join us here on the show out to the wider world, because as the aim has always been, want to help as many people as possible, okay, improve their current life and improve what their life is potentially going to be like in the future. Okay, that's the main aim, in the most healthy way possible. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, ladies and gents, and please look forward to another fantastic episode of the AJ Roberts Show of the London Times later this week. Thanks again for joining us, Kat.
Thank you.
And take care, guys, and I'll see you again soon.